Hey, what's going on, everybody? So we are live with Niall here from CodeU Community or CodeU, and I wanted to bring Niall on here to talk some freelancing. So we're just going to have a casual conversation. I'm not trying to organize this too much, and we want to talk about getting started, certain situations, and just kind of go through with that and have an open conversation. I saw Niall's stream on Kevin Powell's channel, and I really enjoyed his process and how he answered certain things and what he basically his background and what he experienced. So I thought I'd bring Niall on here to share some of those, and we'll just have a chat. And I'm sure you guys will get a bunch of value out of this because Niall and I have had both. We both had freelancing experiences. I've had a web development company. I've done freelancing on my own, and so has Niall. So Niall, if you want to take a minute to just introduce yourself, you don't have to give your full backstory. I just want to give you a chance to say something, and then at the same time go into your start. So yeah, just go ahead and let's start there.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Dennis. I'm really excited for this as well. Hopefully it doesn't fall off the rails like most of the streams I do. So I'll try not ramble too much. And my background is I'm a self-taught web developer, but currently I'm the CTO of a company in Dublin, Ireland called Spark. And I basically got there from leveraging my freelance experience, really. So I think that's why we're talking today.
So your start, I really liked. I really liked what you said, and it's really interesting. You were working somewhere else, and you had some kind of life situation where you physically couldn't do certain things, like you couldn't be physically active. I don't remember if you said you couldn't walk, and you just Googled up jobs that I can get without a college degree, and that's what really like caught my attention. When I heard that, I'm sure a lot of people not necessarily can resonate, but can really see a lot of value in that because you just Googled up a position and just started studying it. So tell me something about that. Like what happened there? You don't have to give the details of what happened in your life there, but what was that search like in that experience?
Yeah, so really hitting the stereotypes here. So my previous career, I worked in alcohol. So I sold fine wines and craft beers for a living. And I really enjoyed that job. It was good fun. As you can imagine, lots of free booze, and it wasn't something I disliked for sure. I loved it, but I got rheumatoid arthritis, and for anyone that doesn't know, it's just like an autoimmune disease that attacks your joints, and I got it pretty bad. It's usually only for older people that get it, and I wasn't able to walk anymore, and I wasn't going to be able to even work the job I had that didn't pay me very well. So I couldn't even afford to go and get real treatment for this. So I just didn't know what to do. So out of desperation, I started Googling best jobs without a degree. And as you kind of alluded to, I started teaching myself between customers to code. And eventually some of my customers became my first clients, which is a very interesting way about going with it as well.
Wow. Well, so that search, like, how long did that take you when you started looking things up? Like, what was that learning process like before
Oh, it was hell.
before you started freelancing or just doing some side projects?
So I think it was about 4 months before I got like a website that I could do. Maybe it was a bit longer because I know for me, I knew nobody in web development whatsoever. Nobody had even crossed my paths in web development. So when I was starting, I originally was like, oh, I'll be a web designer because that looks fun. And I started learning some HTML and CSS. And then because web designers use PHP, I started learning some PHP. And I didn't really like that all too much. So I found Python. I started learning some Python. It felt like I couldn't get a job there because I didn't know how to demonstrate it. And then I fell back on JavaScript because I could show some things on it. And I think like all that back and forth felt like was just running and going nowhere, trying to find something that was like a cheat code to get a job. But when I eventually settled on, say, JavaScript, I just learned enough to use Bootstrap with the JavaScript extensions. And like being able to just do that was enough to get me to build a motorbike site for a customer of mine. It's still online, actually. And I've just started with a new customer recently who knows that business owner and ended up, funny enough, years and years later, getting me even more business, which is, for me, it's just a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually how it ends up going as far as like customers referring. So you're what was the language then? Were you, so you said you were doing PHP, you had some Python, you were doing a lot of front end stuff. Were you using like a CMS? Because if you're building out, like you said, a motorbike website, that's probably just like a storefront where you're just displaying some content there, right? Like, or
Yeah.
were you?
It was just one landing page. It was 500 bucks, and I got one landing page. It was just like contact us and a Google Maps thing at the bottom of it.
But that was coded from scratch, right? Like you weren't using WordPress, not Drupal or anything like that.
No, no CMS.
Oh wow! Did you ever go that route, like at all? You never used one of those, or?
Years and years ago. So to roll right back, before that, I had played with WordPress to build myself a band website, and never, like, I didn't do any coding while I was doing that. I installed a WordPress thing, and picked the theme and wrote in content. So I definitely didn't see that as building a website, nor did I know it was building a website. So I did go back after a while and start playing with WordPress again, because I seen that the power in WordPress was there. If I already had learned a little bit of PHP in my dash to get some knowledge. So I was like, maybe I could do this really well now. So, but I still kind of took in some PHP things, but was still focusing on JavaScript. And the only reason I stayed focusing on JavaScript was I was Googling jobs locally and to see what was paying most. And I seen PHP was paying a lot less than JavaScript. I know it's going to start fights in the chat and everything else, but this is different for everyone's location. And this is something I always tell people: is it doesn't matter how popular people are saying one thing is, it's very localized. Yeah. And Dublin has Google, it has Facebook, it has a lot of those big companies who are very heavily invested in JavaScript. So it just happened to be that scene was growing around us. So I'd always tell people to start looking locally to see what languages are wanted before you start learning, because I just jumped too many.
Yeah, that's good. Danny Thompson, I see him in the stream. He always talks about that. You gotta just do what your market's doing. Like if that's your local area, that's where you can get a job. Do that. Yeah. I'm sure if Visual Basic started getting popular, Danny would be coding in Visual Basic now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would as well. I seen somebody put up something the other day saying, like, what would you do if like no code took us all out of jobs?
You do no code.
Exactly. Yeah, I would do no code, or I'd figure out what's paying well and I'd learn that.
Yeah. Yep. So the jobs that you were getting, so like the first clients, I want to go back into the actual clientele, because that's where a lot of people, if anyone's watching this, if they're just getting started, that's probably the hardest part, right? Getting those first clients. So I really liked what you said. Like you went to everybody, all your customers that you were selling wine and beer to, right? You're a salesman. So you were doing that, and then you just started letting them know, just started talking around in your inner circles. Like I remember doing that same thing, and you landed a few clients out of that. Were most of your clients static websites? Like did anybody go beyond that, or are they mostly just like small business, some kind of restaurant, bar, anything like that?
Most of, like, all of my first few websites were very static, and I built them in complicated ways to get myself experience. So like I built a website for an electrician, and I built it with AngularJS.
Yeah, that's an overkill.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was trying to fill out my portfolio so I could get a job. I wasn't able to get a job without experience. Nobody would trust me. And I was just like, okay, this person didn't ask about the technologies, which most people never do. Yep. You just ask for permission. Can I build your website? And it will look really good and it will work well. And they usually say yes, if the business is started. So that left me with the decisions to see, what do I need on my CV to get a job? And I just started building things that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I remember doing the same thing. Like the more experience I get, the more plugins and tools I use, because I'm just trying to get the job done. Like if I were to get a client today, I wouldn't be hand coding that. Like sometimes I would do it just for fun if I had extra time, just because I enjoy it. But I'm just going to use something out there. Like I'll even go WordPress, even though I haven't used WordPress in a while, but I'm trying to get this done as fast as possible. There's no need to be hand coding that. So in your stream, you were talking with Kevin Powell last week, and you said it got hard after you like filtered out your clientele, right? So like you had your first, let's say your inner circle, you let everybody know, and then the clients that become clients, they're your clients now. The ones that are just not going to be your clients, and then you kind of run out of water in the well, so to speak. You said it got kind of tough there. I experienced something a little bit different. So you were saying like once you got all those clients, like you had a network outside of that, right? Like that got pretty tough for you.
Yeah. And that kind of comes down to me not really knowing what I was doing as well. So I didn't have any other developers around me, so I didn't have anyone to point me in the dark. So when the people I knew who had businesses who needed this help ran out, I was kind of like, what do I do now? And that's when I really started kind of, I wouldn't say cold calling, but being a bit more invasive or making moves to try and find new people.
Yeah, that part can be tough. I remember that too. Like I even went door to door. Like that's tough because you're still trying to service your clients, but you're trying to get more. And like that wasn't my thing. I wasn't a salesman, but going beyond that was definitely a little bit of a challenge. One thing I experienced, like once I filtered out, like I did a video on my first 25 clients, and I had a pretty big inner circle. So I can network pretty well. I'll network within the church, anywhere. It was like in any local communities, like as far as like what do you call those business meetups that cities would have. But once I got those like first 25, what I noticed is I had to network a lot less after that. Like I got my inner circle and I still had to push around and try to get new clientele. But a lot of people started referring us to referring basically my websites, the company that I was working at, or the company that I built. A lot of customers started referring us to other businesses. So we started getting phone calls. We weren't doing the outreach so much, but we were getting clients calling us. And that was pretty cool because if you service them very well, a business owner knows a business owner, and they're always just going to refer. And then it just kind of got rolling to where we were turning down business at some point. So yeah, I'm sure you experienced that on some point too, but just the outreach definitely gets a little bit challenging. And then the rejection too.
Yeah, it took me longer than it should have to figure that out. And I think I spent a lot of energy where I shouldn't have, when I should have focused on making sure the people I had were very happy, or even asking the people that I knew, could they recommend me to somebody they know, or even getting references from those people. There's a lot of things, a lot of missed opportunities early on. And I think some of that was a result of I was not building my freelance portfolio to build a business. I was building it to get a job. So because I had these blinders on, I was just focused on getting the job and forgetting that I might want a business out of this later. So I completely just lost sight of what I should have been doing, really.
Yeah, just early mistakes, like that's going to happen, and it worked out for you, seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not too bad now, but you learn from those mistakes, and I wouldn't even say mistakes. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. I just know I could have probably done more with the network I had, because I thought I really wanted a job until I had a job, and then I didn't.
Same here. I like your the background of like trying to create your own experience too. You mentioned in that stream too, you were trying to apply for jobs. You just learned, and you're trying to get a job as a developer, but nobody wants to hire a developer without experience, or it's usually pretty hard to do that. So you don't have experience, you can't get a job, but you can't get a job because it just kind of goes back and forth there. And you had to create your own experience, and that's really cool. Like I think that's a really good way to start nowadays, is freelancing. Because even if you're not trying to make it your career, this isn't what you want to do full time. Once you're sending somebody, let's say you're sending in a resume, if you're saying that you're doing freelancing or you're showing real client work, that is your experience right away. So you completely change the game. And at the same time, you also said you don't really learn until you're on the job. Like you can learn all you want in theory, but unless you're out there troubleshooting, out there building something, trying to get in someone's head and trying to understand what they want built out, you're not really learning. Like that's really when the learning begins, is when you're on the job after the basics. So I like that idea of creating your own experience. Like for me, I did it by working at a company, and I just told my boss, hey, I think I can do this. So give me some time, and I'll try to build this out. And like that was my first experience. And then ever since then, the job offers keep pouring in, obviously because I've built out a network now that I'm known for developing. But even when nobody knew me, when I was applying, they saw that experience, and that completely changed the game. That's really cool. I'm building that up.
For sure. And it was a necessary evil. I didn't think I needed it until I had one interview that really kind of changed my strategy, and I was applying for everything to try and get a job, as most new people do. They don't know what they are. I was probably bolder than most. I was going for mid-level jobs. I was going for junior jobs. I was going for whatever. Just let me in. I'll try talk my way through it. And I remember after about 20 interviews, one person said to me, look, we wouldn't even consider you for a junior position. And, that I was like, you didn't need to be so harsh, but okay. All right, that's fair. I need to recalibrate here a little. And that's when I thought I need to prove somebody wrong by building stuff. And using that venom that I got from that kind of negative feedback to build something productive out of it. And that's when I started saying, right, I need to build stuff. Nobody's taking me seriously here at all.
Yeah. And if you're freelancing, you pretty much skip the junior developer position. Like junior developers are, I'm not going to say assistants to like senior developers, but you're doing just kind of tedious work. You're usually just told what to do and you apply it. Like I haven't experienced everything, so I don't know exactly what everyone does, but it's usually pretty low level stuff in that sense. But if you're freelancing, you're showing a lot of responsibility. You're showing initiative. Yeah, that automatically pretty much puts you in a senior developer position. Like I've never been offered a junior developer position after my first job. It was all senior. Like they're saying you're overqualified to be a junior developer. We want you leading this team because we see that you've done that in the past, and nobody would even offer that for me. But yeah, like I definitely are going to propel you to the next level. Even if you aren't ready to be a senior developer, it doesn't mean you're going to freelance and now you're a senior developer, because that could put pressure on people, but you're getting that level of experience, and the company's going to really like that.
All you're going to learn in a job is how to be responsible and how to solve problems. That's like web development is managed uncertainty. You don't know how you're going to solve something, but you kind of put your finger in the air and you say, I think it will take about 2 weeks to do this thing. And maybe you'll get it done quicker, but usually it'll take longer. And maybe you'll have to spend late nights figuring it out. But that's just kind of the pain you put in early on to prove that you're worthy of whatever this situation is. I know, like for my first role, then I did get a mid-level position, or I don't even know, it was called I got a software engineer job straight out the gate. It wasn't a junior position, and I was delighted because it made me a lot more money than I was used to making. And then, like within 9 months of my first job, I got a senior position, which it was close to tripled my income from there. So I went from an income of, I was making €10 an hour in my alcohol job, and I went to making over 110,000 a year in less than 1 year after I started building things.
Wow. Yeah. You talked about the sports car too. Managing money. That's something that it's kind of cool. It's a little, I guess, a side topic from freelancing, but you made some money and had to change up your decision process there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually trying to sell that car right now. So
you still got it?
I still have it. It's a fun toy car.
What was the car?
It's a Mazda MX-5.
Okay.
So, tiny little sports car. Total overkill. Did not need it. Nice. So I suppose for some background on that story for people that are listening and just kind of hearing a glimpse of this, after I got that job, the senior position job, I had got a 6-month contract, which in turn was what made me start my own business, really, because I needed my own limited company to start taking in money. And I got this contract. It felt like I was printing money because I wasn't used to this kind of money ever. And they offered me a 12-month extension. I signed it. 2 weeks later, I bought a sports car. And 2 days later, they rang me and said my contract was cut. So I panicked because I did feel like it was a fluke, because I had went from like 0 to like 1 million really fast. You know, that kind of like, I was like, there's no way I can convince another person to give me a job this well paid. Yeah. So the real imposter syndrome kicked in then, but I also just kind of had to do it as well. There was no choice.
Yeah. I guess you're going to experience that with jobs too. Like you can get fired any day, so you still got to be good with cash flow. But freelancing, you're running a business, and that's different. Like I remember some months we would push over, you know, as our company, we would push over 25, 30 grand. And then we would just have like 2 months of nothing. Like all the projects ran out. Clients were just on their monthly service bills there, or just paying their fees. And yeah, like we would make more money. We would get a bigger building. Like I got a building right in downtown in our city. And then that was like right when the client's contracts pretty much ended, or when their big projects were done. So it's always kind of tough managing that. And then, yeah, because you're seeing the money, like it's in your account, you see it, you're like, okay, I can do something with this. But I learned how to forecast for that and pretty much flatline the average out through the year and say, okay, even if we made 30 grand, we really on paper only made 15 or even less than that, because I need to make sure in the months where I'm not making money, I still have something to survive on. So I'm not constantly desperate for projects.
Yeah. And it's only in the last, I would say 18 months that I've kind of gotten control of my finances again. That really took it out of me, but just out of excitement. And I just assumed it was constantly going to be like this. And I was going to just constantly keep making more and more and more. I didn't realize I was going to take a major step forward and to have to take a step back to slowly then move forward again. So it took a good while to make up for that mistake as well.
Yeah. So pricing, you went into that earlier on, but you said you sold your first website for 500. It's better than I did. Like I remember I had to talk somebody into the pricing, and I ended up having to basically build it out for free. But what I did was I was like, okay, if I build it for free, you're going to be on a 2-year, $100 a month contract. So the website in 24 months would be 2,400. And I remember it was like I think it was a dentist. It was one of those like mom and pop shops. So I always had to like negotiate my way in. But so you sold the first one for 500. Did you have like a service fee, and how did it go up from there? Like as you built up value, because 500 is still decent for your first project. Like you're still learning, trying to figure things out.
My first handful of projects, I just told people, like that was part of when I was telling people that I was available. I would just say, hey, by the way, I can build you a website for $500. I just told about 20 people that I knew that they ran their own, like they were, solo owners of businesses, like the electrician job. Like I built that Angular website for $500.
So there was no like pricing structure. You just said $500 website regardless. Like you didn't estimate per hour what's going to happen with it. Just
no, because I was doing this between customers. I was still earning money while I was doing this. I hope my old boss isn't watching this now, and I probably owe him money for all the customers. I was using that as my little office. I was like, yeah, meet me in the store and we'll go over business.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What did you end up selling them for? I don't want to go into pricing just in case you're still doing that or one of your customers is watching or something, but you probably scaled that up pretty well. Like once you got familiar with that process, like what did you use for the pricing structure, and what was that for?
Yeah, now it is a case of, and we talked about this, right now is very different than then. And that's because it's no longer a solo operation. It can't be, because the scale I'm working at, I need designers, I need help with these things. So I have to factor those things in.
So you have a team, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, I had to build a team. I was a team of other freelancers as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
For the same reason. It wasn't like I employed people. I had freelancers who also were trying to do the same thing. It just happened to be that I was bringing in the most business, and I was the one asking for the most money, which could get people paid well.
Yeah. That's a good little hidden gem that a lot of people don't know about or don't utilize is other freelancers. Like for us, networking with other freelancers or even other web development companies, you're going to get a lot of work referred to you. Like there's times where they're too busy, they're going to send somebody your way, or they can't build out a certain feature. Like going back and forth, networking with other freelancers, you get to see their experiences, so you learn a bunch. But just networking with that, yeah, it's definitely gonna up your game there.
Yeah. Do you have any like specific question on the pricing models or?
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know everyone's like, there's people from all over the world, right? We have all different countries here, and everybody obviously has their own. The market's going to be different everywhere, but I want to know like how did that scale up? Because I'm not trying to go for specific prices, but did you like increase that by like a significant amount in then like a 3-month span? Let's say you built out your first 5 websites, and then you said, okay, now I think I'm worth a lot more. I can double this price. I just want to see that growth and try to help people understand that, because for us, we scaled up pretty quick. Like the first website was that $100 a monthly service fee. And then a couple of websites into that, maybe 8 or so, we slowly scaled it up. And then I think it was like 3 months into it, we sold a website for $3,000. That took me a week to build. So we scaled up pretty quick there, but I want to see that from you.
Yeah. So I took a completely different tack than most people who go into freelancing. They stick to smaller projects. I leveraged the first jobs I got, which were enterprise jobs. The very first job I got was with a company called Amdocs. They're a huge Israeli company. And I worked on, I think, 7 enterprise projects within 9 months. Like it was baptism by fire. So as a result, I started learning a lot about how to build enterprise software and enterprise grade software. And there was a lot of, my niche became, I build software rather than websites. So I build web applications. I'm not worried about I'm not doing marketing anymore. I'm not doing the CMSs. I'm going to build you a bespoke solution for a problem you have. And that was something that most solo people can't offer because most people don't have the experience. Usually freelancers stay freelancers and they stay small. Because I went into enterprise contracts and was architecting things for enterprise customers, it gave me a bigger vision for what I could do.
Gotcha. Okay. So the scaling up, you're saying because you're working with large scale applications, you're going for obviously the bigger contracts. You mentioned Bank of America at one point. So yeah, that's a completely different route. Yeah, because you completely jumped out of the solo developer. So
kind of. I still did solo applications, but like my bottom tier, like, and just to kind of put a pricing on it, like if it was a month project, the least I would charge would be like 12 grand for, that'd be the bare minimum I could charge. So if somebody came to me and said they had a project under, say, 10,000, I just had a figure in my head. And this is just something people kind of have to do as well. When you figure out what you're good at, is pick a price you're comfortable with, but also have a no in your mind as well. Because a lot of people just are afraid to say no because they don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Yeah.
And as a result, kind of price themselves at the bottom, because you will always get people asking you for cheap things. Whereas if you focus on the customers that pay more, they usually respect your time a lot more. They usually are a lot more understanding, and they are a lot more realistic because they've thought about it. They know you have a skill set that they need and they're willing to pay for it. So I found only bad things by undervaluing myself. Yeah.
What you said about the large paying customers and valuing yourself, that is a weird phenomenon. Like the more you charge, the better clients you get. It's so weird. And it's only going to make your life better. So like clients that I think it was like my top 5 clients probably made me 90% of the money. And then the bottom, the other 90%, those are the clients that made me the least, but yet took most of my time. They're going to call you up any time of the day they want. They're going to ask for every little update, and then they'll be surprised when you send them a bill for it or when you let them know that's going to cost. So it seems like people that have the money to put into it are going to, like you said, respect your time. They know what they're getting. They value that. That's so true. That's such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I now do, when I'm doing business development, because I do business development for the business I'm in right now. And we do talks, and I do talks for local businesses where I offer free advice. And that's my lead generation really is done by giving free advice to people. So I say, hey, I'm going to be here answering all the questions you want for these hours every week.
Yeah.
And people come in, they talk to me. And the first thing I say is, ask whatever you need to ask me now, because trust me, when we work together, I'm expensive. And because I tell people that out the gate, they value me a little bit more anyway, because they know I'm expecting to be paid, one. And two, it just kind of weans out people who are going to be chancers straight away, because
Yeah.
I've said it. I've let
You
them
filter
know,
'em.
and I'm willing to help those people, absolutely. And I'll often say to people I know that are comfortable taking that maybe are working on Fiverr and things like that, that I do know, and I'll say, hey, I know these great people who've helped me out in the past. Maybe you should go with them, but this isn't for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll if they are serious, maybe they might have been trying to lowball you, but they'll come back to you and realize they want to work with you. So
Yeah.
yeah, establish that early. Did you ever upsell clients, or did you ever upsell services? Like, let's say you worked with another freelancer. Did you just factor them in and say, okay, that freelancer is gonna charge me $1,000 to build out this little component, or did you upsell that? Did you just like charge the original price, or?
Yeah, I factor in. I always made a margin. If I was bringing in somebody, I always factored in for managing somebody else as well. So that
Yeah.
was a job as well. So that's always a bolt-on service. Like we'll get into discovery phases in a few minutes. I know that's something you're interested in. But when projects get complicated, it's less of a bolt-on, as in more of here are your options. You know, which pill do you want to take? And
Yeah.
I usually give like 2 to 3 options on like a build choice to people, and with the pros and cons of each. Because some people just want to get an MVP that they can take to investors. Other people want to have something that's making money, and other people are trying to overhaul an existing application. So depending on that, you have a very, very different plan of attack.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, like the example would be like photographers too, as far as like upselling for what else. I just want to clarify that for people. Like a lot of businesses need photos. If we're doing something for a restaurant, they need pictures of the place, they need pictures of food. So we would outsource that to a photographer, but we would make sure to do that. So if the photographer is charging us $500, we would charge 700 because we're now the project managers, and it takes my time to have to schedule that, and I might as well make a profit on that. I had a business partner that always said this to clients when they would complain. So they would want something done really quick, or they would want it done cheap, and he would always say, you can have it done cheap, you can have it done fast, and you can have it done good, but you can only pick two. So if you want it fast and cheap, it's going to be shitty. If you want it done fast and good, it's going to be expensive. So that was always fun to factor that in and give the client the option. So hey, we can do that, but it can't be all three. We have to be able to factor that in, and then you kind of put the ball back in their court and let them decide. That way they feel like it's their decision.
I absolutely agree. And I know I think I misunderstood. So because that on kind of photographers and other like services that I don't put in my wheelhouse, I always have people I recommend that I know are good. And it usually ends up as like a favor mechanism, you know, like it's like a lead for me. Whereas this person isn't ready for this yet because they need to have their branding sorted, or they need to have whatever else sorted. And like you said, that becomes like a project management service in itself.
Yeah.
And it's not something I can afford to take my time with. It would just be way too expensive. So I just have to completely hand that off to people I find reliable or give recommendations. Then to build the real things that I'm good at eventually, hopefully. Like I played a long game where a lot of people don't. Like a lot of people are expecting to have a conversation today and start work in a few weeks. I have a conversation today. I'll be okay if that person doesn't come back to me for 18 months because I know when they bite, it's going to be a big fish.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some contracts take months to work on too. I've had those where I've known somebody for 8 months before we even established a working relationship. Like there was always just that slow build up to that.
Yep.
So that leads into something I want to ask you then. Liking the clients you're working with, you talked about the discovery phase. You mentioned that, so I wanted to get into that. We mentioned the fact that the not the cheaper clients necessarily, but usually the ones that are paying a lot less are usually going to be your more difficult clients. But it's also very important to work with people you like. I know a lot of times that's not an option in the beginning, and it's definitely a luxury that you get later on once you establish yourself. But that process and making sure you're working with people that you like, people that you connect with, somebody that you can maybe have a beer with, whatever your thing is. Yeah, you have this thing where you go through like a discovery phase. So you meet with a client, you take them out for drinks. How does that work? And how do you filter your clients out? Because in that interview process, when you're talking to somebody, it's really a two-way interview. You're not just hoping to get the client if you have the luxury, but you're also making sure, is this somebody that I want to work with? Because that relationship could last years, and that's years of your life taken if it's not a good one. You don't want to spend time doing stuff you don't want to do.
For sure. So yeah, and you've hinted at that, but that is a philosophy I have, is for both hiring people and working with customers, is only work with somebody that you'd be willing to have a beer with. And that goes for colleagues, that goes for, I suppose, professional connections, because they end up taking a lot of your time. If you're working with somebody, if you hire somebody, you have to make sure that you're not trying to avoid them because you feel it's awkward to have conversations with them. You also want the customers. I know to a lot of people, I have an acquired taste because I can be very blunt and I can be very direct, and that makes some people uncomfortable. And I usually start things by being very direct and blunt with people. And I can see if somebody gets annoyed at me very quickly, I'll go, okay, we're probably not going to work well together. Because you don't take criticism too well. You know, so there is certain things I do, but the discovery phase is definitely the easiest service to start with initially. So spending a couple of weeks on helping a customer plan their project out. And this is a paid service that I get designers involved with, and we help them brainstorm and think their ideas through, and really start tearing their ideas apart and rebuilding them. Because everyone, especially because I deal with a lot of startups, everyone thinks their idea is brilliant and perfect, and that they're definitely the next Facebook, or definitely got this. Yep. This is going to be bought up in a heartbeat. So taking them through that tender process will very quickly identify the people who you'll be able to work with. And at the end of that, you have something tangible you can give them. So they have an example of how you work and how you deal with them, and a plan to build their product. So it's a very easy thing. I always say to people, hey, let's do this 2-week discovery phase. I'll give you a design document and some software architecture. So if you don't want to work with me, you can just bring this to another software shop and they'll be able to estimate it much better for you with this in your hand. Without that, you're going to get some really broad ranges of pricing. Yeah. So it's valuable to them to have that document that they need, the design document with a plan, regardless. And it's going to be needed to be done by somebody when you're talking about application builds. So that discovery work is essential, in my opinion. And I think it's not looked for enough by people. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'll build it. And then they lose so much time on just talking about the plan with people. And that's not time a lot of people get paid for.
You're usually charging for that discovery phase, right? Like there's some kind of fee in that. Yeah.
It's an expensive process for a lot of people, because a lot of people don't see the value in it because they feel like their ideas are airtight. And that's, again, if somebody won't pay to...
It's another filtration process.
Yeah, if somebody won't pay to figure out if their idea is really worthwhile, they're just like... The way I put it is, if somebody was going to spend 30 grand on a small app and they weren't willing to spend 10 grand to get a prototype or a design done, like that raises big red flags for me. So I'm like, hold on, you're so definite about sinking this money in and that your plan is perfect and that you won't change at all during development, but you can't give me anything to show me your idea. You know, there's some major red flags going up there for me if we haven't done that initial session.
So the discovery phase served its purpose in that case. If they won't even do that, well, that's the first step. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're leaving them with something tangible. You're right. They're going to have to go through that process anyways. And yes, something that I kind of did in that process, as far as like the discovery phase and trying to estimate that, because that's one of the hardest parts. Not the hardest parts, but it's a pretty challenging one in trying to figure out what your client wants. Because like you said, everyone thinks they have the next brilliant idea, whether it's a mom and pop shop or an app idea. And going through that and trying to estimate it, because I think as a developer, estimating timelines is, I think it's pretty damn near impossible. Like you always just want to take your estimate. If you think you can do it in 2 weeks, say it's going to be 6 weeks because something's going to come up. And that discovery phase right there is what allows you to find that. You want to know, like I've had people come to me and say, oh, I need this application that just notifies our team and we can get updates. And that's it. Like there's nothing else. It's a simple application. Okay, cool. That's going to run you, and you give them a price there. And then when you start talking features, when you go into building that prototype, you find out they want instant messaging. They want a social platform on that. And it just kind of goes on through there. So prototyping that is where you can find that, because I think estimating is pretty much impossible in this situation, but you can make that a little bit better through that discovery phase and find out what you need. And you have one story where you didn't go through that discovery phase, or at least you didn't do it that well, and you ended up taking on a client and you found out you couldn't build it, right? There was like a Drupal website where you said yes, and then you spent months on working on something, and because you didn't fully understand it, you wasted a lot of time and probably the client's time too. Like tell us about that.
Yeah, so I as you said, I've seen an ad for somebody looking for a web designer to build them out a website for whatever, and it was actually a local radio company, and I got in touch with the guy who ran it, and I said, yeah, I can build websites. Let's meet up and I'll do this. And so I met him, great person. We got along well. We got some food, chatted, great time. And I took the project. I opened the project because it was already started and he just wanted to change some things. And I didn't even know what the hell a Drupal was.
a Drupal?
Yeah, I was like, what's a Drupal? I was like, I'll figure it out. Bold and confident. I was just like, yeah, I can do this. And on I went, and it just hit me like I was spending all my waking hours trying to figure out and learn this thing and figure it out. And I just didn't have enough problem solving experience. So I quite quickly became overwhelmed with all of the things I didn't know. And I had to go back to the customer eventually and just say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm really sorry.
Oh man, that's a character building moment right there. I've had some of those where you pretty much just have to eat what you said and suck it up.
Yeah, a lesson in humility for sure. Because I was untouchable, because I knew HTML and CSS. So, which looking back on it now is like, what was I thinking? But like, I thought that was how websites were built at the time.
Yeah. So that leads into a good topic then, as far as like being ready. Like there's I want to get your take on it. But so when is somebody ready? Because I want to kind of expand upon this, but this experience, what you just had with Drupal and jumping into something, it's something in theory you can prep for, but you're never going to have everything fully figured out. So when is somebody ready to start freelancing? When would you recommend it? Like let's say to experience, they just learn how to code. Should they start right away? Should they try to figure out all the mistakes that they're going to make and try to solve them early, or should they just go into it?
No, I think my philosophy is always like you should always be uncomfortable, no matter what you're doing. You should always be uncomfortable with what you're working on, because that means you're growing. It's the same as if you went to the gym and you had a solid workout, it hurts. And I think professionally, if you want to grow, it should hurt as well. I would say to somebody that's trying to get into this, get those initial customers from people you know, and people that you can be really honest with and say, hey, I'm not sure how long this will take, but I will do it. And that's the best way to start. And that's the only way, in my opinion, to start, because without somebody being understanding, or without somebody knowing where you're at and what you're doing, you're leaving yourself in a position where you might be so stressed out that you can't even think straight because you're so worried about the timeline and delivering that you forget about the process of learning.
Yeah. And that's where pricing can help too. Like I get trying to price early and trying to value yourself, but that's where it could be helpful to even think if I think I'm worth, let's say $1,000 for this website, still charge a little bit less and let the client know about that. Because even though you might get underpaid, you might do a great job and have sold a website for 30% off, but you took that pressure off yourself. And then the next client you now understand, okay, I know I can do this. I'm capable of it. But if you charge really high and you mess up, you could ruin your reputation and actually hurt yourself in the long run, because now a client's out several $1,000s, you didn't deliver. And depending on what town you're in, business owners, they talk, word spreads, and now they know. But if you were open about that and said, I can do this at a reasonable price or something that's cheap, even if you mess up, they're going to be much more understanding, because now it's not such a big dent in their wallet right there. So I guess not a popular opinion to charge little, but that's the way I saw it. If I charge little and I mess up, then there's more leeway for forgiveness.
So I think reputation, especially where I am, Ireland has 5 million people. Okay. It's a small country. Right. Word gets around fast. It's a joke, but like, you are genuinely about one connection away from knowing anybody in the country. It's just the way it works. So your reputation has to be airtight. It's not like, I suppose, the States, where you can just move across country to hopefully leave the bad reputation behind and continue on somewhere else.
People will still Google you up if you have a name, so even that will stick with you.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the internet even takes away that. So I think you should always try and I like, say, relationship-based contracts where you tell people, look, I'm going to do my best to achieve results for you. And if I come back to feedback with you that will take more time, it'll be, it's honestly in their interest. And I think that's the other thing, is make sure you're always giving more value than you're getting. Even if you're getting a lot, you always have to deliver more value as well. And I think that's the only way to keep your reputation pure as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. You can definitely don't want to ruin that. And if you keep a name, it can last with you forever in a good way or a bad way, for sure.
Yeah. I think so. And it's also, it can compound, and, it can give you great results. It can be your biggest selling tool, because you don't have to sell anymore, because people will find you. They'll come to you. They'll need you because you're the person that solves these problems. So why wouldn't they go to you?
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that's the dream, really, is because no web developer wants to be out selling. It's not for me, it's not comfortable anyway. I don't like it. I like helping. I don't like selling.
Yeah. So that you're going to have to do that running your business. So freelancing, you're starting your own business. So you're dealing with a lot of stuff that many web developers won't deal with, because if you're just doing a couple of solo projects, you can probably run under like a sole proprietorship. But if you're really starting to get yourself out there, now you're starting to manage taxes in a different way. And you're really focusing on the business side just as much as you are on the development side. How much coding did you find yourself doing, or actually working on websites when you were in this process? Because I found myself, probably the part that I didn't like about it was running back and forth to clients and trying to either sell or put fires out. What would you say that split was?
I should know this, because I told Kevin about this last week. I think it was about 50%.
50%.
I think like it worked out. Like, I would block off time and weeks where I would just be coding. And I would have that planned out, but I would also have to factor in time I am not coding, and factor that in. And especially early on, that's tough, because what all you will factor in for, and everyone does it, is it can't take that long to make a few phone calls and to invoice somebody and to chase an invoice and to get my next customer and to get something else and to about 10 more things that jump in on top of that. It's way more work than people think. Anyone that thinks that freelancing is like, haha, golden ticket, this is easy money, you will probably be working a lot harder than if you are working in a job, because you will have to work late nights, because again, you're trying to protect your reputation. You will go above and beyond when things go wrong. Whereas if you're in a business, you're kind of like, meh, I'm getting paid anyway today, so I'm going home. And
check out at
it's
5.
a little bit more comfortable. Like, obviously that's the other extreme, because most people don't do that. But you are responsible for your income, and you have to take that responsibility very seriously. And you realize how much pressure that puts on you when you take that responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I want to spend some time in the Q&A then too. I don't want to go off topic, so I'll let you guys know. I'll answer a few of these. We'll go through some. I'm not going to go through and answer everything just because I'm trying to keep it on the freelancing topic. So we'll take a minute and jump in there. Neil, do you have any advice for new freelancers? Yeah, anybody just getting started? Like we've went through this. We had a whole, we're up to 50 minutes right now. You've given a lot of great advice, but what's a recommendation you can give somebody that's just getting started? Just something quick.
Meetup.com or something like that, and go into local business groups. Skip the queue. A lot of people end up just going into like web development meetups and trying to network and ask other developers things. Skip that messiness and nonsense completely and go straight to businesses who are going to business meetups to better their business. They're already receptive to improving their business. So you're in the perfect place and the perfect time to sell your services without even selling, by just introducing yourself and saying, hey, oh yeah, I build web apps, or hey, I build websites. Nice to meet you. Here's my card, or here's my LinkedIn, or here's whatever. That's going to be way easier than all the cold calling that you could be doing and everything else. I feel business groups are the only way to sell now, because it's the best way to sell without selling.
Yeah, that's golden. You're getting to meet your clients. You're seeing them, well, ideally face to face. I guess not so much right now, but you're starting to feel their problems right away, because you don't have to tell them I build websites right away. You can get to know their business, ask them questions about their market, and now it's not a cold call anymore, because you're just having a conversation and you're going direct to the client. Yeah, somebody asked a question about Fiverr. I can't find it right now. I'm trying to scroll through it, and I liked your response here, because there's you said there was a race to the bottom in a lot of these platforms, and I want to hear your take on that then.
So I think it depends where in the world you are and the cost of living of where you are, because the Fiverrs and Upworks and all that kind of value, like, it's just people are like, I have X amount to spend and that's that, and it's usually small amounts of money. And for most people, where I'm from, and I know where you're from, Dennis, you wouldn't be able to afford to live if you are doing the Fiverr rates. It just wouldn't be possible. That being said, if you're in a country that does, support your income and you would be able to support your family, I see no harm in trying. But I think you really need to think about the long-term strategy here. It's okay even if you are starting off cheap and it eventually rose to a livable income. But I know from looking at that it would take way too long to make a livable income on something like Upwork or Fiverr for me.
Yeah, it has to be done right. Like if you go there just to earn the buck from the direct sale, that's not going to be good. I remember Ed from DevEd talked about that. I think he was the one that mentioned going to Fiverr, but using it to build longer term relationships, because even if you build that first connection, you can use it. Like if you're just starting, you're going very cheap anyways. You can use that to gain some experience, but there's a good chance, or it was Floor and Pop actually that mentioned that you can use that to get multiple client long-term for other projects. Like if that client really likes you, one thing you'll notice is if you've ever paid for a service, it's really hard to find somebody good in a certain industry. Like once you find somebody, you always refer your guy to somebody, right? Hey, I have a plumber. Like you gotta call my guy. He's really good. Everyone always recommends their guy, even though there's other plumbers out there. But once we build that connection, that's what we want to use. So that you start getting those recommendations and maybe sell other services to them. Now, if they're on Fiverr, they might be trying to go cheap. So that might be kind of tough to do. But if you can build up that reputation, people on platforms like codementor.io, the ones that have the highest ranking do end up having the luxury of filtering clients out and only getting the better jobs. And that's kind
Yeah.
of related to what somebody asked here. How much should I ask? I'm assuming you're asking how much you should charge. We kind of answered that as far as like starting up early. If you're trying to just get a reputation going, it should start cheap or not cheap, but lower. But that really varies on your situation and what the project is in your location.
And just to kind of follow up on what you're saying is, somebody who has a great example of this is Kyle Prinsloo, who does the freelancing course. I spoke with him, and he said his first customer, his first like monthly revenue customer, came from Fiverr because he sold a small service there, and then they talked offline, and they ended up upselling a little bit more, and that customer within a couple of months ended up paying him, I think, $1,000 a month for services. So it started really small, but it ended up being a big break for him. So although it's it can be a useful tool for some people once you go in with a strategy. So maybe if you wanted to use it as a tool and you offer like a cheap website audit and things like that, where you can get talking to people after an audit. People are just trying to sniff around to see if they should be improving things. Maybe you're getting people at the right time then, and that might be a useful tool, but it's not something I have tried. I just didn't see the value for it for me personally.
Yeah, I think that's who actually Florin Pop was referring to, was Kyle Prinsloo. He talked about that. Like, I think that was a part in his book, maybe even, where he was going through that and forming that relationship and going much further than just a quick sale.
Yeah. I had Kyle on. I was asking Kyle a load of questions on my channel actually about freelancing before, so he went into that story. It was very interesting. Great guy, very knowledgeable. Runs his own development agency, but very much a freelancer in spirit. He does this day to day, and has some great experience from taking things like Fiverr to an actual business. But yeah.
Any horror stories? So like with clients, any situations that were just like completely change your experience, or were just interesting stories?
Interesting stories. Definitely that Drupal one was that was a horrible situation to get in. That's one of the worst. The contracts being cancelled is also another horror story. From then, I've not had too many horrible war wounds. I've had lost contracts, mid-contract before I've delivered things, and that's been not nice. But I think after a couple of like knockout blows, if to say the least, you get a little bit more comfortable with those punches as well. They're not as like, they don't wind you and paralyze you like they did the first couple of times, because like,
for sure.
When like the Drupal situation and the losing my big contract situation, they crippled me for a while. Like I was like, I can't do this. And that's tough. But then you realize after you get up from that and you continue, is no matter what happens, you have to continue. So I don't think, rather than scaring people off and telling you some of the horrible situations, I'll just say it gets easier with the more crap you deal with.
Yeah, you just start understanding that's part of it. I actually have a few I want to share, but I saw a couple of good questions, so I'll get into that while I'm in between here. Yeah, so there's somebody's asking what time should a client pay before or after a project. So for me, I used to always have a down payment up front. It wouldn't necessarily be half. Like I know a lot of people do half up front, half after. But what I do is I always make sure that the client has some kind of a down payment, to where I'm never doing work without some kind of payment, to where if a client decides just to leave or doesn't want the contract, I don't ever do any work that could potentially leave me unpaid, because some clients can do that. They'll just leave, especially if you're not working let's say you're working remote. They won't pick up your phone call. They won't respond to your emails, and that's it. Good luck getting your money. You're most likely not going to get it. So I always make sure to do that. Usually there would be like, if the project was a $5,000 project, I would have like a $1,500 deposit up front. And then there would be maybe payments throughout that process as we go through phases. It depends on how big it is. Now, if it's a small project, I might just do half up front, half after. If it's like a $2,000 project, that also works. How would you go through that process?
I usually take, if I can, and this is kind of customer to customer, with some MVP builds and people that are bootstrapping these things. it's tougher to say, hey, give me 50%. That's the nice part. If you can ask for something, I would always say get something. You have to get something to show that they're committed and they will pay you. So as a rule of thumb, the very least is being 1 month ahead. So if I'm to start, you've already paid me for the month's work, and we'll continue in that fashion. And that way there's a constant funnel of funds going through. It's not one big hit for a customer, and before you deliver the project, it's been paid for.
Yeah, that's good. The whole month ahead. I like that. Like if a project's going to take you 6 months to build out, you're almost doing that like rent for an apartment. Like usually they'll charge you first and last month. That's because if you don't pay your rent, they're not getting screwed out of their rent because they already have your last month's pay, so they can kick you out in a month and know that they still got paid for that. So it's kind of that same concept there. You're protecting your downside.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, like, it is a business. Be careful with it. There's nowhere else you would start. I guess a restaurant is the only place you pay after, really. Like most. It's a small fee, but I know for me the fees are too great to start missing them out on. It'd be a big blow if people stop paying me and they'd be getting a lot of my time and work.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just go back to the horror story then. So I've had a few actually. Some of them are not as bad. Some of them are pretty rough. So the first one is a client that I had where he paid me for SEO services, and it's not really a horror story, just a funny situation. But I told him in advance. So search engine optimization, for anybody that doesn't know it, it's just a ranking on Google or other search engines. And he had a really bad ranking. I think he was like on the bottom of page 2. Like it wasn't really a good ranking. It was a landscaping company. And we rebuilt his website. I let him know, hey, this can drop your ranking. Like we're completely having to re-index your site. We're having to submit this to Google Webmasters, do all this stuff. Rankings will drop. And he calls back the day after we update his site, and his ranking plummets, obviously. And he starts calling and almost like harassing us to get his ranking back up. And he demands that we get it back up, that we call Google to rank it, in situations where a client is completely clueless on what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get Google on the phone right now and get your site back up and rank. It was the funniest thing. And I had to like almost send him like this legal letter. Like it was a pretty formal letter basically saying, if you pull this shit on us again, we're just going to end this contract and we're not going to fix anything on your site. But you'll have clients that are just so out of touch with how things work. And our job is to educate them. And obviously I did educate them in the process, but they called me Google boy. So I knew how to work with search engines, and they just thought, hey, this guy can contact Google. He can do whatever he wants for us. So just a funny way that a client views you. So that was kind of a pain in the ass.
That's like, and the worst part is you can't roll back. There's literally no way to roll back after that because it's done.
Yeah. We ended up just making him pay up whatever he had and terminating the contract. There was another one where we had a client, and this is using WordPress. So WordPress has like security flaws all the time. I've had so many sites hacked. It's a pain in the ass. It's why I don't like to use it so much. And we were serving it up on GoDaddy. So that was our server. And somehow, this is a church website. Somehow the site got hacked to where there was a porn site on the church for over a week. We couldn't figure out. We had to take the site down. Nobody noticed it for a bit, but we get a call from the pastor. Yes. And it wasn't redirecting to a porn site. There were just pictures flooded on the website. I didn't know what to do. Like, how do you talk yourself? How do you explain that situation? What do you? Yeah, probably one of the.
You hope the pastor isn't technical, and you say you did this. You did this.
Must have been your search history that just.
This is because you touched yourself at night.
Oh, yeah. So how do you recover that? But it was tough. I mean, it was one of those moments where you freeze. Like I load up the site and I look at the URL and I look at the site and I'm just like, what's going on here? And I didn't know what to do. So I go to cPanel, I take down the site, and then for some reason the domain was still holding it there. Oh my gosh, it was one of the worst. I had to pretty much completely I had to nuke the site because it was a static website anyways. But there's situations.
I love that.
Yeah, there's situations like that could just, man, like Whew.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to be explaining that.
I mean, of all websites, like give me like a landscaper, give me a dentist, not a church. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not what you want.
Nope.
Yeah, that's probably the last thing you expect when somebody's going to donate to the church and
Yeah,
they get
exactly.
sidetracked.
Stumble a brother.
It's a test.
Oh
You can
man.
just say you are testing the visitors.
If you hit exit, then you passed. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's other ones too, but like the SEO one, that's got to be one that sticks because just stupid client behavior and yeah.
Yeah, and
If you learn that that's part of the process,
that's part like that's some of the reason I don't get into and stop getting into web design and like SEO and that side of things, because it's very hard to give somebody a definite like you will be number 2 on Google. Like it's impossible to do that because it takes
can't guarantee it. Yeah.
time. It keeps changing, but it's very hard to explain that to a customer after you've charged them for that service that, oh, I guess it didn't work as well as I thought,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just being transparent. Like we always would tell them if we're doing SEO, like this is a service to improve, not a service to rank you. And usually we would end up ranking them like on the top. It was local businesses. It's super easy to do that, but yeah definitely not a promise there.
Right. So I see somebody asking me what bootstrap meant. And just because I use that term a lot, I might just explain that. Bootstrapping is when somebody is paying for something out of their own pocket. Like they have an idea that they're trying to get off the ground and they have some savings and they're putting it into themselves. So that's what I usually say when somebody's bootstrapping their MVP or their minimum viable product to go to market or to go and get investors and things, that they might bootstrap it themselves or do a lot of the heavy lifting, like writing the content and, really be hands-on with it.
Yeah. So you also mentioned MVP too, minimal viable product. A lot of people get confused there. That's like the first prototype of a product. Like if you're trying to design a website, it doesn't mean that this is the final application, but you get something built out to where it's functional. It's the minimal viable functioning product of what you're trying to build. So you can understand that it's possible. Then after that, it's like adding in features, maybe styling the thing or the website. That's minimal viable product. Just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, and I always feel that's my favorite way of dealing with customers as well, saying, hey, we could build this huge project, but let's get an MVP first. So it's a safety net for both of us. So I don't like going away for a year and coming back with a product. Let's get you something that you can see in a couple of months and that you're happy with before we continue.
Yeah, and that's actually a good solution to people that send you these app ideas. Like a lot of people will send me a product that's going to be worth, it's going to cost them like $70,000, right? Hey, I want to build out this application. It's going to be this next Facebook or whatever. Building out an MVP, I always let them know, hey, I can build out something for $5,000. Let's do 10 grand, but let me build out a prototype first, so we can at least understand that this works, that it can do something, and let's see how you feel in a month. If you have $5,000 to spend or $5,000, go ahead and spend it on the MVP. Don't go all into it, because there's a good chance it won't work. So going through that process too. Most of them end up not working. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll pay out their first couple of $1,000s and they're done. And I just saved you a bunch of money right there, because I didn't have to build out the whole thing because the idea wasn't as good as they thought it was, or for whatever reason it didn't work out. So you get to save them money in that sense, because I can take your money, but ethically I won't do it, because if I know the product's going to fail, I won't build it. Like I want to make sure that both of us are successful, because then you go around town bad mouthing my name because I built you a bad product or whatever that is.
And this goes back to estimating projects and staying on time as well. The longer the project timeline is, the harder it is to guess. It's like when scientists say, "Oh, in 10 years there will be floating cars." That's just a vague. Random. It's such a vague, random number that it's just basically like that will never happen, because. So at least if you keep like a tight timeline and you say, I can deliver this one killer feature in a few weeks. Like I'm working on probably the biggest MVP I've ever taken on at the moment. And it's a running app. And the there's a lot in there, but it kind of hit my upper limit of 12 weeks to get that MVP out. And there's a lot in there. And it took a lot of planning to make sure it was something that we could deliver in that time. And that's the other thing is the smaller timelines. If you can give people like options to see value early on, they also trust you more then, and the business will probably continue, especially if they were open to, spending 70,000. You say, hey, how about we spend 35,000? You see if there's value here, or, spend half of that, see if there's value, and then we'll continue after you show it to people.
And you're building up that trust too, because now they're seeing you're not just trying to take their money. You're actually valuing what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very rare people go, oh yeah, actually, pay less money for now, please.
Yeah. So somebody's asking, I don't know if they're referring to, that story that I told you about the church website, or just in general, but I've had hosting costs go up like crazy. The first time I ever worked with AWS, I ignored their free tier limits, and we ended up getting charged several grand. One time the account actually got hacked and we had a $7,000 bill. But yeah, that's stuff like you want to look out for. Make sure you're not giving out any access keys. I don't know what I did. I might have pushed code that had like a secret key or something like that to like my AWS account, and somebody got into it. But other times, or the other time that we had this issue was we launched a product and I had everything scaled up like to the max. So once all the users got on the site, like we were paying premium for AWS. We had the backups running at like several times an hour for the database, just ridiculous stuff. And I look at the bill, and yeah, we were out several $1,000s, had to scale everything down. Turned out we only had to pay like $30 a month for that. And, I was maxing it out, but that was really all it took to serve all the clients that we had. We didn't even need to do that. So that's one story of dealing with that and unexpected cost issues.
Yeah, you learn to love serverless when those kind of stories come in, because it is very hard, especially when you're building something, to say, I only need a small machine, because we all have the idea that our app is going to be hit by thousands of users every second. Everyone thinks that, but it's usually not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, AWS, I think we've all had those AWS stories. I've gotten a couple of thousand on bills on things. I've had ridiculous bills on AWS as well. Like you figure out how you can save money, like, turning off your test servers after 6 and turning off things on the weekend when people aren't on. Like you figure out when you start spending lots of money, how to save money. And the only way to do that is by making those mistakes, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's why that's why you get paid a lot for working just with AWS. There's people that specialize in that. Yeah. And they always, like, by default, when you're creating like a database, they max everything out. It's like backups running at all times. And then it's your job to figure out what's going on and tone that down. And I would say the solution to that is to watch it. Like, they send you emails at certain marks, so they let you know that you're about to cross a certain tier, but log into that. I say when you launch a site, log in every couple of hours just to check it, look at your billing statement, make sure nothing crazy is going on, and then check that almost every day, maybe a couple times a week or once a week at least. And like right now, I'll check it maybe once a week, and I still do that even though I know what's going on, but I always got to make sure something doesn't happen, someone doesn't hack into my account and do something there.
Yeah, that's a great, just kind of rings a bell. A lot of people forget to do, especially when they're starting their own, when they're building things or delivering things for customers, or you're building your own software as a service company. Because, like, I think there's a lot in common when you're, creating your own software business versus, being a freelancer. There's still marketing, there's still networking. You still have to get to the right places. You have to use the products, and you have to be signed up and have accounts so that you can feel the same pains as everybody else. It's not enough to pretend that it's just handed off and it will never be your problem again. I know for pretty much every product I'm part of, I will also, I will sign up as a user to make sure that if an email sequence even goes wrong, that I will get that and I'll go, oh, I know that. But a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, I would do that if a client had like a contact form, if it obviously wasn't personal information or anything like that. I would usually have a dummy email that all copies were sent to me, just so I can see that cycle and make sure that everything's working correctly. Any errors go directly to me too. Yeah.
I see Tajanch is a mentor of mine. He's talking about billing alarms and budgets are super important with AWS.
Yeah, I just saw that one too. Yeah, absolutely. You can set those and definitely look out for those.
Yeah. So that's the safest way to, stop getting panic. I get them. I need to put my threshold up because I get it like the first week every month now. I'm like, you've gone over your budget. And so then after that, I'm like, yeah, of course I've gone over my budget. And then I just forget about it. And then at the end of the month, I go, I spent how much?
Yeah, exactly. You ignore the initial one because that's just crossing like a free tier or whatever that is. And then, yeah, you have to check in after that. You get used to seeing that alert to where it doesn't even bother you.
Yeah.
Someone said, I'm assuming this is AWS. I put my first WordPress websites up on Google, free tier. Okay, Google. And got so many hacking attempts in China and Russia. Those Russians, they'll get you.
Yeah, it's a hobby. It's interesting to watch it as well. It is interesting. I forgot you're Russian, Dennis. I always forget that. It's you've
this probably throws you off right here, right?
Yeah, you've infiltrated perfectly with your accent now and all.
Yep. Clean that up now. Nobody knows.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to.
There's Tej saying, I thought we were friends, but mentor. Yeah, he's a drinking buddy of mine, really. But we solve. Area? Yeah, he lives very close to me. We're drinking buddies, really. We've worked together quite a bit.
Nice. I got to visit you there someday when things return to normal. I've always wanted to visit Ireland, so.
For sure, we'll bring you on a Puchin walk around, which is our local moonshine.
Yeah, well, I'm Russian, but I can't drink like you guys, so I don't drink like Russians even. I have a couple of beers and that's it, so I got to watch out there. So yeah, let's just close out here. Then I'm just seeing, there's chats going back and forth. I try to get to the questions related to freelancing. I don't want to have like these delays where we're searching and scrolling through it. So yeah, Neil, thank you for coming. This was a good chat. Like I like your experiences. I watched your stream with Kevin Powell. Loved everything you said, and your experiences are so valuable to people because anytime you're seeing somebody that's been through that process, you're going to hear stories like what we just went through. In my stories, the horror stories, the experiences with clients, how to work with them. I think it's all valuable stuff. So if you want to, I already asked you to give your advice. You really had some good points there. If you want to leave everyone with something, you have a minute to do that. I also want to make sure to show your channel. You didn't ask to do this, but I want to make sure you guys check out Neil's channel. This is Kodu Community. He's on YouTube. He's also linked in the description, so make sure to check that out. And you have a lot of videos on React and front-end stuff. Whoops, not the only one here. So yeah, I just want to make sure you guys check out his channel and you can leave people with something.
Yeah, you will automatically become a better freelancer if you go and subscribe to my channel.
Of course.
I think
yes.
That's all you need to do, and the customers will start rolling. But seriously, if you feel like reaching out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter and you have specific questions that because I know some of these things are a little bit more sensitive when it comes to pricing and questions. So feel free to reach out. It can take me a couple of days to get back to people because I am very busy. But yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any specific questions. I think the easiest thing is to just get started and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll do the same. I'll say that. Get started. Like that's the best piece of advice is learn what you can, get started. Just give yourself grace to mess up. You're going to make them. Don't try to avoid everything. Just try to learn what you can and go on from there. So thank you guys for joining. This is a fun stream. Hope you guys got a lot of good information out of that, and we'll see you guys next time.